So November 2023 meeting of the Faculty Advisory Committee to the Board of Regents. Let's get started with approval of the minutes from October. Everyone have them? I can actually let me maximize it on my screen so I can share. Not the best view. Oop, wrong one. Okay, I give up. We all have it. All right, any motion to approve them?
So moved.
Okay. Second,
I was muted. I said second, sorry.
okay, got it. Any discussion or modifications? All right, oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
oh, sorry, just one minor one. I think I said that the Cultural Programming Committee for Quinnebog, I had listed the figure of 10, we had $10,000 and it was cut to $1,000. We actually had $11,500.
Okay,
So just in terms of, you know, historical record and precision.
okay. Got that. So all in favor of approving them with that correction?
Yay.
Okay.
On behalf of everyone.
Any opposed?
Linda, okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just trying to vote yes.
Okay. All right, and any abstentions necessary? Okay. All right, and actually, welcome, James. Hi. How are you?
Hi, how you doing?
Good. So James, you want to introduce yourself as non-tech?
Yes. Hi guys. My name is James Chaddick, and I am an assistant math professor at Aslanto Community College, and I was voted in by my other colleagues to pretty much I would be replacing Mary Beth, so I'll be substitute for on her role.
Okay. In January. All right. Well, welcome, James.
Thank you.
All right, let's move to the agenda. Pretty short agenda today. Just discussion of the joint meeting, report on the November 15th board special meeting, quick conversation about community college elections, old new business, and adjourn. Is there anything we need to add to that? Okay, all in favor? Keeping approving of the agenda, or any motion?
Sorry, can I just
Yeah.
mention one thing? I had emailed around about a discussion
That's right.
maybe about the tuition free or reduced tuition. There was this
Got it.
body advocated for a tuition change for those who suffered from violence in Ukraine, and I wanted to ask if we could talk about that.
Yep.
Well,
Let's add that right before old or new business. Okay, all right, so motion to approve with that change.
All right.
Okay. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so let's move on to discussion of the joint meeting.
Well,
Well thinking.
let me say, I'll start. I'll just say what I said before. I was pleased to see that there was actually a quorum of the voting board members, and it was good to have the two students there too. This is all a change from how things have been in the past, and the fact that the meeting went past an hour. Thanks, Mike Shea, for insisting. That was important too, because then we had quite a discussion, and I think there were some different perspectives put forward, which is definitely a positive thing. We'll have to follow up with members of the board on some of the issues and define what actions we would like to see taken. But that said, I think it went well.
Mike?
Yeah, I would also thank Terrence Chang, because he could have closed it right away and kind of left it open. And I'm glad they all stayed. And I was impressed with how many of them had their cameras on and were paying attention. I'm just agreeing with you, David. There's a big change. I don't know, hopeful. I guess, we're facing such a crisis that the only thing we can do is hope that this works with them getting money for us. Because if we don't get the money, I don't know what happens to this whole system. It's going to go in a terrible downward spiral because you're going to get fewer students, right? For all the reasons we've talked about with fewer resources. And then you get less money because they're saying you don't have the student. It's going to be awful. So let's hope they can convince Lamont to be this businessman approach and think that everything's just about, kitchen table balancing balancing the books when it comes to education. It's got to be an investment.
Brian?
Yeah, and in addition to getting us more money, the problem with more money is if system office controls the money, that only gets us so far. So what I'm hoping I'm starting to see is a board that actually is going to exercise its oversight function and start asking questions of the administrators. So for example, the enrollment question, how did you come up with these enrollment projections? More importantly, how are you coming up with the financial projections? They really should insist on a presentation, a detailed presentation. How do you make your financial projections? Walk us through that process. We have yet to see that, but I hope at some point we do.
Brendan?
Yeah, I I agree that, well, I think we have now in writing an oversight effort, and it seems somewhat unprecedented. The letter that Lena sent mentioned that they're gonna look into whether they fell short on their statutory requirement to report to the General Assembly. I don't think it actually takes any looking into. I think we already know the answer, but I mean, that's oversight right there, right? So we do need to not lose track of this. We do need to hold them to their word, I think, but they wrote it's a written word as well, which seems fairly unprecedented. Regarding the governor, he's had some meeting today or this week with police forces from all of our campuses or campuses of all higher education, because there's a concern regarding tensions, and those tensions were attributed to events in the Middle East. And he's talking about how important it is to, handle these things and, diffuse these tensions. I would like him to acknowledge his own role in creating these tensions. To attribute it to, at least on our campuses, to attribute it to some force beyond Connecticut is like absurd. His office in particular is putting people's jobs at risk. People are losing jobs. Our students are losing services. That creates tension. And to sit there and not even acknowledge that while you're claimed to, be concerned about it is a little absurd. So I don't know what we say about that, but he's gone on record saying he's concerned with tension on our campuses, and he's the cause of a significant amount of it. So I'll stop with that.
Rob?
I'm just going to say a note relative to what Francis said. We had a meeting yesterday, our Senate, and Blanchard was there digitally and gave an overarching statement. And then our own interim president fielded a number of questions about his own mitigation plans. But one of the things that Blanchard said very, very distinctly in response to a question was his position is that the board is not in the position to be overseeing individual campuses with operations, that his approach is that that's going to be increasingly in the hands of the local administration. And of course, one of the big questions we have here is what happened to the administration here locally that meant that we lost $12.5 million? Nobody seems to want to speak to that. So when I heard him say that, I thought, well, this is, given what Francis just noted, which was his hope, I'm hearing something else, which is they're trying to trim back the central office oversight and assume that those who are in the positions they should be in, doing the work they should be doing at local campuses, that will happen.
Mike?
I was just going to change the focus for a second and say, I just want to thank Brendan and David and you, Kalina and Francis for the really clear presentations. It's really hard to be clear and concise. And I think they made a difference. I was glad they listened, and I'm so glad you took the time to invest producing those responses. And I think Stephen Dares was really helpful too. So just a big thanks to you guys for doing that.
Aye, aye.
Brendan again, and then David.
I was going to respond to what Rob had mentioned, but now I'm a little not sure. I think there is quite a bit of a puzzle that's never been resolved for me, which is the balance of autonomy by the local management with the central office. APP was not grassroots. That came down from on high. The mitigation plans came down from on high. The 5% tuition increase, my understanding was that was delivered to the campuses without input from the CFOs or the campus president. But I don't really know what he's talking about. He's new. I just don't think anyone finds it plausible that you just have these 4 independent fiefdoms and they check in now and then with the system office. I don't know.
David?
Yeah, with respect to Rob and also now Brendan, the point I was trying to make in terms of the relationship between the Board of Regents, the system office or offices, as the case may be, and the constituent institutions. And from this, I keep repeating it as a mantra, system approach. There is one area of supervision where they have relinquished their responsibilities, and that was supervising the presidents of the various institutions to make sure that they've balanced the budget. I think it's not a good idea to have people at the system office reaching down to say to direct the provosts or the deans or whatever. And I know, for example, there was an effort to establish, and maybe they still have it, a council of provosts or something like this, but for the universities. But that doesn't make any sense at the system office because those provosts report to their institutional president, not to the provost at the system office, who's going to have to find something else to do. So I think, yes, Brendan, there's a question of how do we balance between system-wide or a system supervision of the institutions and their autonomy and integrity as constituent institutions in the CSCU system. I think it's something that's going to need a lot of work because we want to avoid the 2 extremes of micromanaging the institutions, but also simply rubber stamping what the system office wants. So, there's a lot of moving parts, as they say, in this whole business. The second point is there's a real hurdle to overcome to get additional funding. All right. And we can talk more about it when we talk about the November 15 meeting. But I just want to say 2 things. One, they went around for 5 years. The previous board and the previous administration saying they're going to save $28 million and this was going to be less expensive and so forth. Not surprisingly, many legislators and advisors to the governor said, okay, well, that's what they're supposed to be doing, right? And secondly, then you had the opposite extreme of this exaggerated ask in the CSCU 2030 proposal, which elicited the opposite reaction, underfunding from the OPM and in the governor's budget. So we have to take into account those 2 obstacles, along with the third one, which Colleen has mentioned, which is the long-term underfunding of the baseline, for the colleges and the universities, right, which goes back even before 2017. So that's a lot of hurdles to overcome, and I think it's going to be quite difficult.
Yeah, Carmen, you were asking about video recording. It was streamed to YouTube Live, so it should be up now on YouTube already.
What is that?
The meeting that we just had. She was asking if we had a video recording of it. Yeah, and just to add, because I think I didn't mention it, I had to cut out parts of what I was saying, but the report is fuller. There's another aspect to a certain extent, you can see some of the underfunding reflecting the savings that we were supposed to be producing, right?
Yeah.
And another aspect to this fringe restructure is that while now the non-retirement fringe is getting paid out of our block grant, the block grant is constrained in its growth by the spending cap, which is linked to like inflation or income tax receipts, right? Whereas healthcare costs are not. So there's a great risk that those healthcare costs are going to continue to eat at our block grant at a much faster than it can actually expand.
Good point.
Yeah. Anyone else? I'll say we've been edging closer and closer to meetings with the board where they feel like conversations. And I just feel like this one really did kind of feel like no one was rushing off. There was some room for thought and reflection, and that's something. And you do see how much turnover there has been in the board. So the question of oversight, though, is an interesting one. All right. Should we move on to the Wednesday meeting? More fun stuff. So November 15th, special meeting of the board on deficit mitigation. I can actually just add one thing because, we're not doing our standard reports, me and David, but I think I've had one ASA meeting before this meeting. And, you can see the presentations online. I'll just tell you the one takeaway I had. The thing that struck me was that folks were presenting plans that should produce revenue, but with no mention of cost, right? And this is once again reproducing the same problem that we have consolidation. We want to innovate and create some new stuff to save money that clearly will not be produced within the next fiscal year, first of all, so it doesn't directly address the problem that we face. And secondly, no talk of what kinds of investments we can actually make in these projects. So there was that. So that was the sort of like the closer look into the revenue generation part of the deficit mitigation. And there was no further specificity there either, in addition to the meeting on Wednesday. All right, so most of you all watched it. Do we need to give I don't even know where to start.
Let me say a few more
Go
words,
ahead,
because basically their remediation plan, right, was distributed to us a minute before the meeting began, so nobody had a chance to look at it. Right, I sent you a copy of everybody, so it should be in your email. And there's a 4-page letter from Cheng. There's a 1-page sort of summary overall, and then there are 7 remediation plans, which is one more than was expected, but they've added one for the system office, even though in fact there are now 2. But I think they've included the CC, the community college system office, and the community college one. But if we look at the 3 areas, first of all, I just don't note one thing. They use the June budget figures for surplus and deficit, which are inaccurate, definitely for Central and for Eastern, right? Which has a deficit for both of them in FY25 when both presidents at the presentation said they will have a surplus for FY25. That, of course, is an easy way of having a nearly $10 million boost to their numbers when they finally do a calculation, because they will have eliminated that much of a deficit, which never actually really existed. That said, the other aspects of it were, if we look at the revenue initiatives, and that's the point Kalina was making, they're not costed out, and it's as if they're going to happen immediately, and that's not the case. It's going to cost something to do it, and it's going to take years to do it, and so consequently, there aren't going to be enhancements to revenue from the so-called program initiatives. The third one was the expenditure reductions, which were really drastic for the community college in Western. And I note that there was 4 of the plans which have voluntary attrition. That is to say, retirements not filled or delayed in being refilled. The community college at nearly $10 million, which is quite a bit. Eastern, Southern, and Western at from 1.2 to 1.6 million, and nothing indicated for Central or Charter Oak, plus 3.9 million for the system office. Also, I noted there is a 4.2 million for FY24 and a 5.1 million for FY25 operational initiative savings in Western, and I suppose we can conjecture as to what that might involve for a campus which is divided into 2 physical locations. The other thing that I noted was that the additional cash support from reserves for the community college, 7.3 million in FY24, and in FY25, 15 million. But for Western, it's just going to be a $5 million loan from the system office CSU reserve. So my quick take is the following. Besides the magical savings due to the fact that CCSU and Eastern are going to overperform in FY25 relative to out-of-date June deficit numbers, nonetheless, the revenue enhancements are not going to deliver even close to projections. Expenditure reduction underestimates likely retirements and can only help to offset the unmet revenue enhancement through a possible retirement incentive, which is apparently being talked about. And there's some reserves being used, but with the limitations I noted. So it's intended for the OPM to show, how hard everybody is working to make the changes necessary. And it's possible that, there are tens of millions of dollars that could be saved, but I only see it coming from retirements and from the use of reserves. That's my take on it.
I wish I were more prepared to present more fully on it, but I will just tell you the first thing that comes to mind, and then as we discuss, hopefully I'll think about the rest. But I mentioned this in my presentation, but I don't feel like I was clear enough on what the consequences were for Western. But I do know that for CT State, the savings, much of the savings will come from reductions in EAs who staff most of our student support offices, and 776, I keep thinking I got the number wrong, but that's a real number, 776 sections of courses. There's no way to improve enrollment and retention with a plan like that, but there's nowhere else, I think, for the money to come from. So that's, what we're doing, which will just put us in a cycle of being justified more cuts and more cuts and more cuts, as long as the narrative is, if your enrollment is reduced, your funding should also be reduced. So, strange way to invest, even in a business mentality. You don't offer less to attract more customers, but that's what we're doing. We're even constraining capacity and trying to attract more. So it's kind of an impossible situation that we're in. Anyone else? I know that there was a more detailed document that went out also for the community colleges Has anyone looked at that very closely? Brendan, go ahead.
Right, I don't have anything on the community colleges. I actually wanted to ask Rob something if I could.
Yeah,
Rob, yeah, Rob, I heard that Blanchard told Western that the CSUs, well, what is unclear to me. He said something about the CSUs becoming research institutions and, you know, bringing in new streams of money from grants, like in a major way. Is that accurate?
he mentioned that there were no details. He was not talking anything with specifics. It was just an overarching statement that included, bringing in more research funds. Yeah, but in terms of Western, we don't have any of that. We don't have a research help officer. We did at one time, but it's gone now. And we've tried to make the argument that we can't talk about bringing in more research funds if we don't have the infrastructure to support faculty to do that. And that did come up in the Senate. There was no real response to that other than we recognize that that's an issue. But his statement was of the whole Senate meeting, maybe 8 minutes, and then really our own president took over, and he's definitely emphasizing, our president rather, the usual line: technology, and with the liberal arts. He loves the liberal arts, so he tells us. But that doesn't answer your question, because really all I have is to tell you that he did mention that issue, but there were no details.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess we could also talk about the high points, and in particular, Central is doing okay, which is, nice. Eastern's fairly stable, breaking even next year, a little bump this year. So some of us are hanging on.
Could I just add
Yeah.
something? From the Eastern report, there was that bit about that
This,
Florida-based company, Bricks.
Bisque,
Bisque, I'm sorry, Bisque.
Yeah.
Bricks, Bisque. And that's an area of concern if it were to spread to other campuses, other universities. And secondly, there's always in the back of the mind of the leadership on Woodland Street, the idea that Charter Oak should be the center for online courses and programs. And we have to really, steel ourselves for opposition to that. I mean, they've tried it in different ways. There was an effort to establish an online program office at the system office. That was turned down by Ray Couture, but there was still the idea of having all the instructional designers at Charter Oak. Was it the Eastern president? Or maybe no, it was the Charter Oak president who said, well, we have to look at the collective agreement problems and also the culture shift involved in teaching courses through Charter Oak. And I think we need to be really clear that the universities have to continue to offer their own online programs and online courses in opposition to any effort to transfer that to Charter Oak. Now, I don't know if our Charter Oak reps are here. Linda is here. So I wonder if what I'm saying makes any sense or can be criticized or should be supported.
I think that, and I'm sorry, I turned it up to here, and now I'm probably too loud to speak, aren't I?
No, you're fine.
You're good.
Okay. Recall I'm an administrative faculty, and I wasn't prepared to be thinking about this, but just my quick response is, it seems sometimes to me that people bring up Charter Oak when they want help with this, and then they bring it up when they want to oppose, because it sounds like, oh, Charter Oak's going to take over. I think sometimes people do look to us as having the expertise, but I also know that, like everybody here, we are incredibly understaffed, and our instructional designers are possibly as overworked as I am. So I don't think I have anything very substantive to add.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
All right, should we move on? Okay. It was a lively meeting, or chaotic perhaps at that beginning bit, just, reporting on the vibes. The audio problems in the beginning. But yeah. All right, so moving on. Okay, community college elections, which I think because we're all so busy, and I'm definitely to be blamed, are a bit behind schedule. I know that James is here. I know that Matthew Keeney is here. Oh, Matthew, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you.
Hey.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Keeney. I teach history at Housatonic, and I will be replacing our Representative Matthew Dunn from Housatonic on the FAC. So I'm excited to join. That was a super interesting joint meeting. Trying to figure out if this is how they always go or what. But yeah, so thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it.
Welcome. Yeah, so we need to go through and make sure that everyone has selected their campus representative. And then once we do that, we can actually do the statewide election to determine who's a voting member and who's an alternate. So I think if Jen, Lois, and I can get some, send an email, ask you all to respond so that we have everything on file. And then once you have representatives, Matthew, and James, gonna need a little blurb from you both, little bio that'll go out in the statewide election. Remembering that, I'll just mention it here and then make sure that folks get the info, but you can select up to 2 people per campus, right? 1 faculty, 1 staff. But the staff member who ends up as a voting member will be the staff member who gets the highest number of votes of the campuses that don't already have a voting member. That's kind of how it works. So it's an interesting and convoluted process, and faculty do kind of get first dibs on the voting, just the way that it works. But yeah, so we'll check in with everybody just to make sure we're on schedule and get everyone in here by January. Okay, cool.
Are the university elections already done?
Has Western done it? I know you've done it at Central.
Yeah.
Eastern has done it. Mike just left. I think he mentioned that he has. So yeah, what about you, Rob?
Talking about internal elections for various committees.
No, just for FAC rep. Have you been reelected or?
There's been no call for votes, so obviously not. I should check up with Rotua about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll reach out too. So yeah, you need to either like rejoin us for the next 2-year stint or find someone to do that. All right. Anything else? Jen, do you wanna? Anybody?
I don't have anything else to add. I think you covered it well.
Cool. Carmen?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I'm just kind of curious, like the community colleges, how many people have like a functioning Senate? I know at Capital Community College, it's been kind of dwindled down to kind of a faculty and staff forum where the whole college is invited, other than the administrators, and we only met once, and I just feel the morale is so low that I just, I'm not really quite sure what this faculty and staff forum, how this is going to move forward. We can definitely have, elections for an FAC individual, but I just feel like pretty much most governance has kind of fallen apart at Capitol, at least.
Well, Gateway's standing setup is sort of like that. We have a faculty staff council, So faculty council, staff council, and then faculty staff council, and then all kind of just collective. But I think what we try to do in the past is just respect the way that each campus does whatever it is they do to follow their process. So if it's at all possible, I mean, it's whatever works for your campus, right? Online voting, whatever. But everybody does it differently. Andre, Mary Beth, John.
Yeah, at Tunxis, we have the professional staff organization, which I presume would be the one that would vote to elect. I don't know if my term is up or not, but we'll figure that out. The other thing is that we're in the process of trying to figure something out, reestablishing the academic affairs committee, and there's a hell of a lot of, well, I have a question for you. Okay, the process that was designed to do curriculum change is pretty well, I don't know what's a polite word for it. It's a monster. And in fact, what people are doing now is just trying to figure out how to make it work. And they're coming up with all kinds of ideas. So I think the conclusion I've come to is that somehow we've got to get faculty, what's the word? I mean, we have to be able to control that process and maybe redesign it, because the problem is it's kind of silly. Give an example. I mean, they changed the definition of economics courses to something totally absurd. They also got rid of all the prerequisites, and they've restored. They put in other prerequisites. So some of that stuff, there was discussions that I participated in, and some of them I think I started. And so we got some changes. Okay, I don't know how these changes happen. Okay, but it seems like you need to have somebody in the central office agree with you. And now the problem is that there's one remaining issue, and that is that economics courses have no prerequisite of math of any sort. And so I put in there, first of all, by the way, faculty has no access to the forms for making curriculum changes. I'm not sure that makes sense. Maybe we could ask them a question about that. Maybe the FAC should pursue that question, because if in fact faculty is supposed to be in charge of the curriculum, gee, it would be nice if they had access to the forms for changing it. But in any case, I wound up, copying, from somewhere else, and I submitted it. And then of course, I sent it out to all the people that I knew were involved with teaching economics. Of course, I don't have a list; nobody does. And half of them said, yeah, that's a good idea. The other half said no. And now this, whatever this is, the council, what's the name of the state, the SDCs, okay, have decided that no, they don't want to have a proposal unless there's, consensus among the people who teach economics. Well, if that's the criterion, they just added another body to the process. We just changed the process, and the thing is that if in fact we have to have consensus or unanimity among faculty that teach the course, hell, I don't even know who these people are, but they're changing the process, making it more difficult for faculty to actually influence it. Okay, because if the system office comes up with a curriculum proposal, guess what? There doesn't need to be a consensus of anything. So I think that's an issue that we ought to pick up. I'm not exactly sure from which end, but somehow this seems very, very wrong. So I don't know what I mean, I feel like giving up on this. Wherever you turn it, I mean, whatever.
I hear you. Mary Beth? Oh, you muted, Mary Beth.
Sorry, thank you. I was just going to comment on what Carmen said regarding the shared governance at her campus. It's falling apart a little bit at Isnuntuck as well. We've disbanded our faculty council, which was our longstanding faculty governance group on campus. We now meet as a faculty. We just call them faculty meetings. And they are called basically when we like once a month if we have an agenda, and if there's nothing to discuss, we're not called together. So, and basically that came about because we couldn't really understand how our faculty council fit into governance in CT State. And so there was, the decision of if we don't fit anywhere and there's nothing for us to actually do, then why are we, continuing to exist? So that's kind of where we are. With that said, we did vote at one of these faculty meetings to elect James to be as an FAC rep. So that part did get done, but we're not, officially in a body at this point. So.
John?
Yeah, just answering Carmen's question, at Quinnebog, we have continued to stand up the academic senate, long standing academic senate, and in the process of revitalizing a staff senate. And then there are the representatives of both that kind of meet together. And we started with that same question, Mary Beth, like there's no, like, where do we fit in this organizational chart? But we thought, well, I think there's this sort of dotted line to the side where, like local governance can have some input. So just, we thought for nothing other than just like, standing for the historical record sometimes, having some kind of input to continue to do that. One of the main challenges is just having enough people even to serve on this local governance because everyone is so tied up with all the other STCs, SACCC, and local campus. We don't have enough people to be on all these committees. So.
David? You're muted, I think.
I think Jen had something before me, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Jen?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hi. We at Three Rivers, we have a faculty council that's really robust and functions well, and a lot of people attend the meetings, and things are kind of the way they've always been at Three Rivers. A lot of faculty, thoughtful conversations, and they appreciate the work of the FAC, and we support what you all do. So things are going well on our campus.
Good to hear. Matt?
At HCC, we have a functioning campus senate, and we also have multiple local level that then report out to our members on statewide bodies. So we still curriculum committee, a gen ed subcommittee, and their subcommittees of our campus senate. And it's kind of running into similar problems that Jonathan mentioned, which is, what are the functions of these bodies when a lot of the work is occurring at the state level? But if anything, they're still functioning as like information sharing bodies on our campus.
Right. Go ahead, David, then.
Oh, just a question. What is happening with the 6 academic deans? Have they been cited, or do they meet with people, or what are they doing?
Anyone have thoughts?
Well, I shouldn't say this. The dean of business and hospitality may be there physically. I'll say nothing more.
Okay. Mary Beth and then Matthew.
In the Dean of Math and Science, I'm fairly certain that there was just one meeting that was called so far this semester. I don't think I missed anything, so I'm pretty sure there was just one meeting and a whole bunch of people on Teams. That was it. Other than that, I've had 0 contact.
Go ahead, Matt.
We're referring to the school deans, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. The school dean for the social and behavioral sciences had a meeting where he introduced himself and invited I think everybody in social and behavioral sciences across the system. And that I've seen him at multiple other meetings now. So he's been pretty active, at least attending meetings.
Okay. I have heard at least commented, and this was at the beginning of the semester when everything was in flux anyway. But that there is no specific job description, which seems to have some, and again, it was commented, right? Which seems to have some suggestions for, what's going on, but, yeah, I don't know. John?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm answering the correct question, but just for, information about deans, we have Dean of Academic Affairs and Student Services, John Lewis, who is a chemistry professor. He's been an interim dean for a number of years, and this isn't the first time that he's filled in at that stint, and he is universally liked among the faculty and many of the staff. He does a terrific job, but he is interim and he's not going to continue in that position. So there's a search to replace him.
Okay, well, let's follow up on what's happening with these deans. We know that the regional presidents, we thought, somebody asked me, what's happening to the regional presidents? And so I went and looked. This is just for your interest, and I don't know what more we can do about it, but they're still being paid. And in fact, this year, they earned $761,457 to be exact. The total paid to them since 2019. I started looking at transparency.gov. It has a new name, openpayroll.gov. I actually started looking just for my 3 highest years for reasons you might imagine. But then it turned out, wow, this is really an interesting resource. They've cost the system $3.274 million since 2019 for functions which were never actually implemented to do anything that would be in the least helpful.
Can I get that job?
What's that?
Can I get that job?
No, I think they've canceled it finally for 2024, but maybe you can ask for it retroactively. So, it looks like I'm told one of the 3 is going to be retained in some other function. That was, I think, Kalina can probably confirm that as well. And one of the 2 of the 3 who are not being continued, one of them seems to have got, in addition to his $250,000 salary, another $70,000 buyout, because his salary for wages and salaries for 2023 are $322,000 plus some change.
David,
I imagine they had pretty good contracts.
Yeah.
What's the site, David, you just referred to?
openpayroll.ct.gov. I believe that's it. Or you look it up it used to be called transparency.gov. So you can find it in either of those. And it's just some amazing things. I don't have it here, but they list the positions under Connecticut Board of Regents, right, which was about 20 people until 2023 when it zoomed up to over 500. Or the number of people at the community college system office, which is something like in the 700s. So I have no idea how they've classified these people and why they've done this. I don't think that openpayroll.gov made it up, but that must be the information they got from the system office. It's kind of bizarre. But I'm not an economist, so I can't quite figure it out. As a philosopher, I was entirely perplexed.
I don't think that's the problem.
Okay.
Can I chime in about Dr. Baker, who does arts and humanities?
Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry about my kids. He had a meeting with the faculty, and he highlighted that he goes from campus to campus to attend poetry events and art openings. That was the bulk of the work that he was doing, and he highlighted that is a mechanism to support faculty. I had a meeting with him for about an hour to advocate for underprepared learners, and that was when he told me that he didn't think that the 15 credit hours was that much of a problem for the students who can barely read and write.
Okay.
Can I respond to something on chat?
Yeah.
Lois, you said that loan to WCSU from the central office is totally insane. I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
They should be giving you $5 million, for God's sake. What, they're gonna give you a loan? You know, what did Brendan say? Are they gonna send out somebody if you don't pay it back? Are they gonna send somebody out to collect it? I mean, it's just idiotic. It's totally insane.
Yeah, when the president was asked about that, he said, "What will be to be paid back over time?" That's as specific as he got.
It looked somewhere I saw you were supposed to pay it back within the next 5 years or something. Maybe it's $1 million a year.
That's what I heard. By the way, for those of you who are interested, here's the numbers. Again, from this openpayroll.com. The Community College System Office had about 100 people from 2015 to 2019. In 2020, it went up to 165. In 2021, 567. And in 2023, 728 people. And that includes 92 community college educational assistants and 355 community college professionals. If you look at there's a classification called Connecticut/Board of Regents, and that includes the chancellor, the various presidents, and so forth. That was pretty well steady at 20 from 2015 to 2022. In 2023, it increased to 508. So, you know, I can't imagine why they've done this. It's a curiosity. Rob, I see that you're amused by the whole thing. I don't know if they did that so they could control those people and release them if that's what they wanted to do in terms of their remediation plan, or whether it's some artifact of a bad database at the system office or whatever. But I leave it just as a curiosity for the moment.
God.
Your hands up.
Sorry?
Your hands up, right, Lois?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to comment on what David is saying, because what they did was it looks like it was about July 1st, about the time of the consolidation, they took a huge number of people and moved them from the Connecticut Community College, Community College System Office over to Board of Regents. That included a lot of people that they had told that they would be reporting back to their campuses, not to New Britain anymore, but they're still listed under Board of Regents. And as Stephen Adair said when we were talking about this, we were trying to figure out why were they doing that? They moved all these people, and he said, well, it's very possible they moved them because they don't have to put them on an iPads report if they put them under the Board of Regents. So it's a huge number.
508 to be exact.
Brendan?
I'd heard that the governor's office had specifically requested a calculation of what the system office costs. And of course, when you bundle multiple functions together, it's impossible to break that out, right? When you put the community college function in with the system office, it's like they're hiding among the other employees, and you can't answer that question anymore. I mean, it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but I don't know why else you would make that move. I mean, if these are people working for the community college and not the Board of Regents or the system office, I mean, maybe it's a good question to ask. I don't know if we'll get an honest answer, but it is baffling.
Seem to have left people like IT people and facilities people they're still listed under the Community College System Office, but it looks like everybody else, they moved.
So David and Brendan, you've both already, okay, I see hands still up. I mean, so speaking of that, I should have mentioned before, but my brain is melted at the moment. You know, after the meeting on the 15th, a very sort of detailed document went out with CT State, all the details of the mitigation plan, appendices, the whole deal, 60-something pages. Pretty impressive. Folks have been looking through it. Did that go to everyone? You know, sometimes you get these emails and you don't know who gets them. Okay.
Rotua asked for it, hasn't received it yet, so.
Okay. How many of you, and that's a different thing. I think she's looking for the document that David has scanned, the letter and so on that we got in the folder when we got to the board meeting. But this is community colleges, the community college only, and it's 60-something pages long. It has a lot of detail, each of the positions, etc. So folks have been looking through this carefully. I haven't had the time because I was prepping for this meeting, but I have received a lot of questions. I mean, there are just some interesting things in there that, you know, folks want to get greater clarity on, or they're looking through their campus and are aware of, you know, that there are positions that they know were eliminated that aren't on there. So they're trying to figure out, are there certain categories that are included and certain categories that are not, right? Like if it's a, you know, whatever, you know, how they're categorizing what they're including in the document. There was a question about things like the fact that there were 22 PTL sections, so part-time lecturer, adjunct or whatever, at the central office, which seemed odd. And, you know, there are hypotheses about what that meant. It's probably release time, but so if we could all take time to look through it carefully, and see if we have questions that we can just get them answered. I think this was an effort towards maximal transparency. But of course that means that, you know, it takes a while to understand everything that's on there. So, yes, the link. Very nice.
And that link also has all the PowerPoints from yesterday, including this, you know, the universities and Charter Oak and so forth.
Oh, cool. Look, I'm just gonna share this for 1 second, just so folks can see where it's located, because this is very helpful. Okay. So this is it. And here is the address. Okay. All right. So how many of you have looked through it? How many of you have had access to this? Okay, just Lois. Okay. Yeah, so let's share observations, because I'm sure we're gonna have questions. Like my head was hurting from all the numbers that I was looking through. There's nothing wrong with them. It was just like, what are you including? What is this? So we'll have to make some sense of that. Rob, was that a hand? Okay. All right. Are we ready to move on? This would be to the issue that Brendan has raised. Do you want to go ahead and talk about that, Brendan?
Yeah, I certainly could. I feel like David is actually probably more informed in many ways about on this issue, because if I recall, he was very active in the prior resolution. I think, Kalina, I think you were as well, but so maybe I shouldn't say anything. All I know is I think there was a great one of the great things this committee did in the past was to point out to the regions that perhaps if there were refugees from violence in Ukraine, we could potentially waive tuition for those folks, and they could study at our institutions for free if they should arrive in Connecticut. And so it just occurred to me that maybe something like that is would be advisable again when it comes to the conflict in Israel and Gaza. So I just wanted to put that out there. Like I said, I'm not as informed about exactly what that involved and even where it ended up, but I wanted to at least put it on the table.
Yeah.
Quickly, it came back from the good old system office, and what they did was they stripped out any reference to Ukraine, and they talked about, in general, refugees. So, Brendan, why don't you simply move a motion that we amend our previous resolution to include refugees from the Middle East?
Mhm. Yeah, and it's
So
just.
now we could have a vote.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah,
Did you say
I
so
will make
moved,
that
Brendan?
motion.
Okay, great.
Yeah, yeah.
And what we'll do is we'll ask for a report back as to what exactly they did, if anything, to implement a resolution they themselves then approved, although it had been kind of, generalized to the point of being watered down. Let's go back to our original one, ask about Ukraine, and add the Middle East, the current Middle East conflict.
Okay. And we have time to bring that to our next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do that. And I will say in regards to that, that was one time that I felt that there was a lot of work done at the system office to kind of, meetings with different state departments, et cetera, to sort of make a process, put a process in place that we're being informed of folks who are entering the state, et cetera. So I think there was some work done in the background. We might even want to ask someone from the system office to let us know, like, is that still, because I believe Alice Pritchard headed that up. So we might want to make sure that someone is still carrying that on and maintaining those relationships between the various agencies, et cetera, because that's necessary. Carmen?
Yeah, actually, if the board or if the system office is kind of really like focused on just changing to refugees. I work with a lot of refugees from all over, and why not just keep it refugees? I mean, it's a certain status. If they already agreed to that, why don't we just say, okay, what are we doing for these refugees?
Yeah.
Believe me, there's a lot of people that could use this help other than from Ukraine and just from the Middle East.
Yeah.
So
we can review, let's do that. Let's review what the policy turned into, assess to what extent it needs to be revised, and then also invite someone to talk with us about how it can be implemented now, like if anyone's really staying on top. I mean, there's so much chaos, it's easy for those things to fall through the cracks, so.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. All right. I think we're at old and new business. John had to go, but he left a little note in the chat saying that he will give us more updates on cultural programming. You remember he talked about that last time, and he's been doing a lot of work to kind of figure out. It's not as easy as you would think. He characterized it one way, right? His budget went to the DEI office, and it seems it's not exactly that straightforward. So I think he's still doing a lot of work to figure out exactly what the story is and who's affected across the system, et cetera. So he says he'll report next time, so that'll be good. Anything else? Anyone want to make the motion then?
Let me make the motion to
All
adjourn.
right.
Oh, sorry. Before we make the motion, just one quick question.
I know we count on you, Andre. Jay, sorry.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
just a quick
I will
question.
defer to whoever else wants to do it.
No, I'm not making the motion. You said that you needed a little bio from me, something like that. So, where do I send that? Do I email that to you, or when do I need to do this by?
Me, Jen, and Lois, and I'll send you a little note asking you for it. Just a tiny blurb about it,
Okay.
just a few
Also,
words
you.
for the ballot.
Okay,
Yeah. Thanks, James.
You got it.
Kalina, could I have some clarification? I realize I may have been befuddled about the election thing.
Mhm.
Were you asking if we had an election of our slate of officers? For
No,
AUP?
just for your position, FAC. We all, we have our 2-year terms.
Yeah.
All of them are expiring in December.
Okay.
And
So
yeah,
now I understand. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
wanted to be
so
sure.
if you haven't, done that yet, please do.
All right.
Okay.
I have a question though. I think I was filling in for Fran's term, right?
Mhm.
So either way, okay, we need to have election. Okay. 2 months.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, because that term's done now, or going to be.
Hmm.
Okay. Back to adjourning?
Motion to adjourn.
All right. I will stop the recording now.